Yesterday we got a new update for Warzone and Vanguard, but when we look at Warzone as a whole, it's great to see changes and adjustments being made, but I'd be lying if in the back of my mind I wasn't just like, okay, but I mean, time's winding down on this, so what's next? Where it's cool and all, but with the clock ticking, I'm always interested in learning what's new and what's upcoming. Today we're doing a bit of just that, talking about the new Warzone 2 map leak and what it means for the gameplay experience upcoming in the following Warzone gameplay experience. There's some new features that will be coming as a result and a few other things to be considered. So as we go along, drop your thoughts below. Do you like the sound of this, or are you hoping to see something added? If not, whatever the case, feel free to drop your thoughts below. But if you enjoy the video, you find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button to stay updated with all things Warzone 2, Modern Warfare 2, and all things Call of Duty. We're on the road to 500,000 subscribers, and there's a lot coming out here in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you stick it here on the channel. I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, for this weekend only, my friends over at Gamer Advantage have bumped up code Espresso to 20% off site-wide and have an additional 10% off on certain frames and lenses. I think the Horizon frames that I always recommend, I'm pretty sure those are actually bumped up to another 10% off, so 30% off total for the best blue light glasses on the market. That deal doesn't come around often, so if you guys are at all interested, check the link in the description below. That said, let's jump into it. So, Warzone 2. We've had a few discussions about it lately, but the most recent and the catalyst for this video is that recently industry insider Tom Henderson gave a bit more insight and even sketched out the rumored Warzone 2 map and all the details that come along with it. Points of interest, world traversal tools, geographic and elevation points, and even brand new features to Warzone in particular, like swimming. Now, for the abundance of caution, I won't be putting the image on screen for you, which I'm infinitely sorry about, but to avoid any risk of copyright strike and the removal of this video containing the information, which that immediately affects you, the viewer, and the potential harm to the channel by a strike, I just think it's best to sort of redirect you to that original posting. If you'd like to see it in its entire sketch form, absolutely check in the link in the description below. But again, sincere apologies for that, but we'll do our absolute best to get everything out there so the picture is painted well in your mind, even without the image on screen. But to begin, let's start out with the world. This map of Warzone 2. Sketched by Tom, it was, for simplicity's sake, a 13 by 13 grid. It was nearly 14 by 14, but each of the final grid rows and columns were cut short, so I guess more accurately it was kind of like 13.5 by 13.5. But semantics aside, the map seemed to be a sort of oblong oval with sharp edges towards the south, but plenty of play space. From the top to bottom, you had Oasis, War-Torn, Oil Field and Modern City, Quarry, Hydro Station, Marshes, Caves, Mountain Town, Harbor, Observatory, Sierra, Old Town, Graveyard, Airport, Fishtown, Shipwreck, and Fort as the points of interest, followed by a sea of blue, denoting water. Now, those points of interest were leaked earlier in the week. The only one missing, I believe, was Dam, so 17 named locations on this map. Again, more than Caldera, though less than the original Verdansk and Verdansk 84. Now, notably, the map features quite a bit of blue, which Tom denoted as water, both in the southern portion as well as on the eastern and western edges of the map. But it looks to be going all throughout the map, cutting through mid-map and even up towards the northern sections of the map as well. So what gives? Because if we take a look at Warzone right now, Caldera introduced us to our first water features, if we can call it that we can traverse, but it's a bare minimum. You can run, sprint, slide, and all through that, the small creeks and water that's just at your feet, and admittedly, yes, you can end up going to where the water rises at points where you can't slide or go prone, but that's the extent of it. If you were to go out past those borders, theoretically, if the timer wasn't there, you'd still end up dying, because when you get to the point where it's above like your chest or anything, it will simply just kill you. So what gives? Why have such a big portion of the map and even cutting through the middle of the map be water if you can't swim? Because apparently, according to Tom, that won't be the case. In his reports, for the first time in Warzone, you will be able to swim, offering up mechanics that we've seen previously in Blackout and Black Ops Cold War's larger team modes for a while now, but for the first time in Warzone, which this likely may introduce boats and vehicles to the mix, which would definitely be interesting. Now, of course, cosmetics and things like that monetarily aside that will probably be introduced as a result, I'm curious to see how that shapes the gameplay experience, because this was a thing that was in Blackout here that allowed you to get across the map from point A to point B, and sometimes in really big pinch situations if you had a water vehicle. And also, Black Ops Cold War had a couple of those maps in multi-team where it definitely helped out. But fundamentally speaking, I think it's nice to see that we're no longer technically limited if this is going to be the case here. So the one thing that when we look at this TAC map, we look at this sketch of it, I want to know the big takeaway of how big is the map. Tom stated in his report, of course, a basic map drawing does not give justice to the scale of the map, but from my impressions, it does seem bigger than that of Verdansk and Caldera, especially considering if the grid reference is accurate. So how much bigger are we talking? In both Verdansk, the original and 84 versions, as well as Caldera, they both utilize a 10 by 10 grid space, and when overlaid, the maps are relatively the same size and area. But if we're going 13 by 13 for a playable space, theoretically, that's quite a bit bigger by comparison, but our understanding has absolutely no concept or tie-in of how big each of those grids are. So it's entirely dependent on what the grid sizing will account for, whether or not that is exactly one-to-one with what we see in Warzone right now, or if it'll be smaller, bigger, we just don't quite know. Now, if it were to be bigger, one thing that I'm sure a lot of people will consider is, well, are we going to bump up those player numbers? And that's an entirely different story and topic of discussion. That comes down to a lot more server side things rather than just allocation for space. But I mean, maybe it's possible in terms of resources if Warzone is standalone here with Warzone 2, which it is looking like, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Now, outside of this, we also learned a little bit by this sketch of some verticality and geographic traversal details. Of course, with the water, that means we're going to be introduced to boats and different water-based vehicles like that, whether it's something that's just a quick rib boat to get in and out of a location, or if it's something that we have like an armored vehicle with a turret on it like we saw in Blackout. We don't quite know, but we're likely going to see something there with that. Tom also detailed that there will be a new train system here going around the map. And my biggest curiosity is if this will be happening at launch or later on down the line. It's entirely believable. Of course, we ended up seeing some sort of traversal mechanic, either a train or the red door system, or now the new minecart system in all 3 chapters of Warzone. So it absolutely makes sense to have, but it's just a matter of if we'll see that at launch or later on down the line. All 3 chapters of Warzone have introduced this later on in season, so maybe that's something that does come a little bit later after launch. Now, verticality is one that was a big thing that kind of struck me here with this, because he denoted that some locations will be more vertical than others, and verticality being detailed in a darker color on that tac map. But what's nice is the point of interest of observatory seemed like the only major vertical space that isn't man-made, i.e. a geographic cliffside or mountain or something like that. Now, it's relatively central, which may be concerning at first. People have that issue right now with Caldera and Peak, and honestly, I agree with you, but I think a lot of what hinders Caldera overall is that Peak takes absolutely ages to reach the base of. It goes almost the entire distance of the map, north, east, south, and west. I'd wager that probably like 70% of the map has some sort of sloping effect originating from Peak, essentially making the only flat lands the outskirts of the map by water level. Otherwise, if you're looking towards the center of the map, chances are you're looking uphill somewhere. So if it's relatively flat with perhaps hills and such like we saw with Verdansk, where it wasn't too over the top, and instead the only main sort of mountain or larger elevation is that observatory, I think that honestly it's not half bad. And by comparison to Caldera right now, it'd play a little bit better being that it has something like that centralized. Now, of course, this also confirms some of the classic points of interest that have already been mentioned as well. High rise and modern city. I'm really curious to see how this one in particular shapes up, because it looks to be about triple the size of downtown in Verdansk. But also it's not centralized. So that could be another big factor here as to how it's perceived, how it's handled. So it might not be as much a hindrance, since not every single in-game rotation going every single match will have to go through downtown like it was in Verdansk, making it less of a hotbed for camping perhaps. Quarry was there under the name of Quarry, Terminal apparently being airport in the southwest, Caves housing Afghan or parts of it, and Mountain Town is assumed to be favela as well. So honestly, there's a lot of cool stuff here that we can learn out of this, but one thing that I do want to mention before we wrap everything up is that this does also mean that this is likely the DMZ world. Not necessarily map, because we did hear that there are multiple of those coming, but reportedly the same world. Think Spec Ops or Ground War, where, of course, that was Verdansk overall, but we didn't know it was going to be the world of Verdansk until Warzone came out. But before that, we had multiple sections repurposed as multiplayer maps, as a Spec Ops experience. That's kind of what it looks to be here within Modern Warfare 2 as well. So what we see on this is likely going to transfer over there as well. But anyways, interesting information coming here out of Tom Henderson and what we learned so far. So I wanted to present this to you guys so that you're in the loop with everything. But that said, before we wrap everything up, a reminder, check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage. If you're like me, who's on a device nearly 24/7, especially at my PC in my case, recording, editing, getting gameplay, whatever the case, combating blue light is something that I've always struggled with. From eye fatigue to sleeping habit issues, I've had it all, and over the years, I've searched for the best help available. But let me tell you, man, Gamer Advantage is just that. And right now, their products are 20% off site-wide with code Espresso, and in some cases, even 30% off for the holiday weekend. They are the best on the market, in my opinion, incredibly comfortable, durable, but most importantly, clinically proven. I'd highly recommend the Horizon frames. That's what I use, and sometimes I even forget I have mine on. So if you're interested in protecting your vision, your long-term health for your eyes, check the link in the description below. They're much better explaining the science behind it all than I am, but seriously, can't go wrong with them. If you're at all interested, take advantage of the best sales this weekend to save you the most money possible. You probably won't see another 20 to 30% off discount for a couple of months at this point. So use code Espresso if you guys are at all interested, but that's where we're going to wrap it up. So let me know your thoughts down below. Are you liking what we learned here out of the Warzone 2 map a little further? Maybe not so much. And if not, what would you like to see that would make it better? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. But if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone 2, Modern Warfare 2, and anything COD related. I'd love to have in the community. That said, thanks so much for watching. Mine's been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.